Hey, I'm back and welcome to a nighttime video. I know that sun is still shining kind of bright, but if it's in your eyes, that's because it's about to go over the hill. Over the horizon. It's 4:53. I just left the library, finished uploading what I had edited up for all the way out to, I don't know, but it's further out, and by the time you see this, this will be behind that anyway, so. Confusing. I still got to learn this stuff and how to set it up better, and hopefully I can get, I don't know if it matters if I'm exactly current, you know. I'm glad that I'm getting ahead of the game, because that way, I think the content I'm putting out, some of it, like I said, is boring. When I'm off zoning, when I'm zoning out about the chaotic stuff I got going on in my life right now. But when I actually get locked onto some subjects that I start talking about, I think they're actually pretty good subjects, and I think I get some really good stuff out. And it's each time I turn on this camera, I am it's making me get more comfortable with the camera. So no matter what, even if I put out boring videos, I apologize if they're boring. But I'm new to this having a camera on. And some of the videos you wouldn't notice that, but it still is. I haven't gotten totally comfortable with it yet. I'm definitely much more comfortable than I was in the beginning. But no matter what, it's good just for me to keep hitting that record button and just keep talking. Because the more I do it, the more natural, the more I get used to it, the more natural I can flow and get out all this good stuff. Because I have a lot of knowledge in me, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom, especially for being 57. I've been blessed to have some great role models in my life and have some wonderful people I've got to learn from that have taught me a lot. The karate master definitely is one of them. That was just, I got a wealth of wisdom from him. Lloyd Kirk, who I talked about before, who was headed out that man in transition group I went to when I was younger. I learned a lot from him too. And then of course looking up to my parents that are all passed on now, I got a lot of wisdom out of them too. I soaked off of their knowledge, you know, like, especially my stepdad, you know. I mean, I used to pick his brain so much. Sometimes I know he'd get frustrated wanting his peace or alone time, but you know, I know overall he enjoyed the fact that I was interested in his life and asked him a lot of questions, because sometimes he really got into telling me some of these stories because I wanted to know. And I told him that, you know, someday, I said, that's funny because I told him, you know, someday, I said, the reason I force myself on you a lot and ask these questions is because, you know, I said, odds are you're going to die before me, Dad. And I want to be able to spend as much time with you as I can. And he's like, Jesus Christ, I hope so. But yeah, you know, he was an electronic engineer. So I learned a lot of tactical stuff from him too about electronics and stuff. And then when he first got his first computer, which was a Compaq, which was BASIC and DOS, and the green screen with the all green monitor. It was way before Windows point and click stuff. This is in the beginning stages of computers. And I started really doing a lot of studying. Dad told me have at it. You know, as long as he was gone at work or that, I could hit the books and start reading it. So I started reading about basic programming and DOS and the difference between them. And I started actually programming in graphics. And of course, because of my relationship with God in my life, one of the very first things I started doing in BASIC was programming a crucifix, a cross, with the cross going out, and then I started doing Jesus Christ on the cross. But like, now you can use point and click, you know, and you can like drag or draw the line wherever you want, or you can actually freehand it, or with touchscreen you can even freehand it that way now. Well, with basic programming, you couldn't do that. You had to, you know, you had to be like 10 print line, then each line you had to say, like 10 would mean that it was 10 dots long, 10, each little tiny green dot on the screen, or whatever. So then you would, with letters and numbers is what you program that line to do, whether it was the length of the line or the timing of you wanted to come out, because then it would do it like a laser. So then when I got done doing the cross, when I'd run the program, it was like a green laser coming across the screen, and it would go, and it was like it was cutting out a green cross. Then it would start etching in Jesus Christ on the cross, And I started doing that. My goodness gracious. I think it might have been in the beginning of grade school to junior high, somewhere in there. Because my friend Mike used to come over, and then we got, God, I can't remember the name of the game we got on there. There's, it wasn't Oregon Trail. We've got another one that, I wonder what the name of that game was. It's kind of cool because there's a castle on this hill, and you had to journey along to it, and then you had to, like, figure out clues and find stuff in order to open it up to the next part of the game. We never did unlock that whole game. That's when computers were new, so we were like, we'd spend hours trying different stuff on it, to try to get past that part of the game. It was probably something simple. Now if I went back to it, because I've learned so much through the transition of computers, now if I were able to go back to that old Compaq program and play that game, I'll bet you I could get through it now, because now I see how, like, the programmer's minds thought differently through basic programming into point and click kind of stuff, But I think I could do it now. But then that old Compaq computer had there were like 5 or 6 inch floppy disks that were real flexible floppy. They weren't the floppy ones in the 4.5 inch with the plastic hardcover. They were in a softer plastic cover, and you could actually kind of bend the whole disc thing. But you didn't want to do that because, you'd be mistreating the disc then. You want to keep it straight. But then you'd slide it in and flip this lever over. So basically, what was inside that little bit stiffer plastic coating of that 5-inch disc or whatever was a disc that was made out of kind of like a thicker version of what cassette tape was made out of. And then when they would get the computer, the drive would catch it and it would spin that disc, and that's how it would put the data on there. So then that was done with magnetics, like a little micromagnet that would be putting the ones and zeros for a space and not a space on that disc as it's spinning for all the code. Now, once we moved up to DVDs and DVDs and CDs, that's laser light. Well, then that's when program discs became like a CD, and then it was laser reading that disc instead of magnetics. I don't know how the heck I got on that subject. Holy mackerel! And I was explaining to one of my friends about the difference for, like, just with sound, we'll say, from the technology that goes on. Okay, when I talked in my other video a couple days back of that or whatever, I talked about the old Victrolas, the old crank phonographs. Well, when you talk about the old crank phonographs or a record player, vinyl, it's a needle that rides on that vinyl that's been etched, and those etchings are just like vibrations for sound. And so what it's doing is that's an actual physical vibration, because the needle, as it's riding those bumps, that needle's bouncing on those bumps, and it's sending a signal. Electronics changes that to electronic signal through the needle into the phonograph and to your speakers, which also have magnetics pushing the speaker back and forth to create reproduce the sound that was put on the record in the first place. So it's going from a actual analog bumping sound with that needle, turning it to electronic magnetic signal bouncing back and forth, which is moving the speaker to get your sound of that song out. Well, that was like a physical thing. Then when I went to cassette tapes or 8-tracks or cassette tapes, that was magnetic vibration, because then it's reading the magnetic charge on the tape, whether it's there or not, kind of like a magnetic strip on the back of a license or a key card or something like that. And but because there's a kind of like any computer, which is a 1 or a 0, which is a spot or not a spot, or a plus or a minus. But in 8-track and cassette tapes, because it was a tape, that when you record on it, it's doing the same thing magnetically for that sound movement, just like the needle that's recorded on there. Then when you play it back, it's reading it, and then it's changing that magnetic signal into sound. And then when you get to laser, then it's a laser. The bounce of that laser image is getting converted into electronics, into magnetics to sound. So what CD is, like if you got a trunk of, like if you spilled, say, milk on your album in the old days, well, it would get that milk would get in the crack. It's gonna mess up that. You'd have to clean that record up pretty dang good. If you got it right away and rinsed it off, you might be alright. But if you dry it in there and you try to clean it up, well, then that's got some plugged up spots. That first spot of the album's gonna sound kind of messed up. Well, when it gets all the way up to CDs, our oils in our hands, if you touch that play surface and get a little bit of your human thumb oil or that on there, well, when that laser hits it hits that oil bead or whatever, you're going micro, and it distorts the laser, and that's what makes it hard to read it. Or if you get scratches in the disc itself, that can kind of distort it a little too, depending on how deep the scratch is or if it's the angle it's at or whatnot. I don't even know how I got on that stuff. What in the heck? Man, my brain works weird. Well, anyway, I was flapping my gums about something. So, that is a little lesson in music technology history. Well, it started out with computer stuff, which actually the music stuff came before the computer, of course. But then it got me thinking about the transition of technology that I've lived through all these years. Can't help but think about it. I never would have dreamed when I was a kid that in the future, the technology that would be going on, I could look back at earlier stuff that kids nowadays, a lot of them aren't even aware that it exists, some of that existed. Just like me growing up, you know, well, I don't know, I learned a lot of stuff when I was growing up, you know. I mean, I even learned about telegraphs. Do you know what a telegraph is? Well, let me tell you, youngsters. Telegraph, for communications, that's goes back to Morse code. Now, if you don't know what Morse code is, that's dots and dashes that are set up for alphabet and some other characters and stuff, but like dot dash dot is, I think, an R. I don't know. I could look it up later, but anyway, or no, dot dash dot might be an S. Or no, dot 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 is S, dash 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 is O, dot 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 is S. I think that's how it is, and that's for doing an SOS. But then like dot dash dot, I think it's an R. But anyway, it's broken up between dots and dashes for different letters. Well, a dot is quick. A dash is a little longer. Like instead of going tap, it'd be tap and then space and then tap. You know, so by clicking this thing, it would send an electronic signal down the line. In the old cowboy days, when they first started doing electricity, with Alexander Graham Bell. And, well, Nikola Tesla was in there, but he wasn't as popular yet. Graham got Bell got the jump on him, I think. But anyway. And that's how they could send telegraph messages long distances faster than a horse can ride or anything, you know, because it go through the wire. So in different towns, as long as they had that wire stretch, they could hit that telegraph and send messages quicker, you know. And that was the fastest form of communication then, you know. And that was all by clicking. And then people had to learn Morse code so they could learn that clicking. And the guy on the other end that's getting the clicking, you know, he'd read the different spaces, whether it was a short space or long space for a dot or dash. He'd be writing it down as he's hearing it. He'd be writing down each letter that he's hearing, and then, you know, be able to translate the message. You know. So for any of you youngerns that don't know that, that's what a telegraph was, and that's kind of how it worked. If not, I'm sure you could probably YouTube a video about the old telegraph system, and you might find it actually very interesting. I might even do that tonight just to brush up on some of my skills. But anyway, God bless you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. I got to get rolling.